Welcome to Growth Gatherings. Here we invite people with special talent, leaders who are shaping the business landscape in Pakistan and beyond. Our guest today, Sukaina Abbas. She's a computer science graduate, and then she pivoted her career as a gemologist. Let's hear her story. Welcome, Sukaina. Welcome to Growth Gatherings.
Thank you so much for having me here today. It's a pleasure.
You had studied computer science from University of Karachi?
No, from FAST ICS. At that time, it was called BCCI FAST. Now, later changed on to the National University of Computer Science.
Okay, and which year was this?
This was the year when 2000 was just taking off, and ours was the last batch that did undergrad in 3 years.
Okay, so this was the Y2K?
Yes, the Y2K batch, exactly.
Okay, and now you're designing jewelry, you're into gemology.
Yes.
Walk us through your journey.
So I would say it's not your usual story of growing up with a childhood dream of becoming a jeweler when I grow up. It was serendipity, chance, and I often say that it was destiny. I was a tech graduate and then I became a homemaker by choice. At that point, I believed that maybe I would not be able to do justice to both the roles of pursuing a career and taking care of home. But then later on down the line, there was some life-altering events that led me into this beautiful journey of starting a jewelry brand. And with my first course in gemology, I fell in love with the field. So I knew that this was the thing that I had to do and I had to pursue it, take it forward.
And it's really brave of you to carve out a journey when things happen because I think that's one thing I feel, particularly for women.
Yeah.
I studied home economics as my first degree, right?
Okay.
And I know at that time, a lot of girls graduating would choose to become a homemaker. But now, many years later, when I reflect back, I think it's a bit of a riskier journey. It's okay
Yeah.
as long as you're open to evolve.
Absolutely.
So, your life altering event, how come you did not get into any spiral of negativity and say, okay, this is it, and ab to halat yahi hai? In fact, you completely change your field and now you're doing so well.
See, I think I believe that one should never be a victim of your circumstance. And always, always look on the positive side of things. No matter what the situation is, there's always a way out. There's always light coming in, and you need to see that. For me personally, I think the awakening was more related to, financial independence because, as you said, that women naturally tend to be homemakers and we're not aware of the ground realities. And once you go through something like that and you realize that, there has to be a balance between both roles, between what you do as a responsibility and between what you do as a creative or as a, as a person doing your career or your field, chosen field.
And during that transition, I'm sure there were good days and bad days. I'm going to be asking honestly, did you seek any external help in terms of therapy, coaching, or did you have your own coping mechanism to get out of that situation and get onto the track which would serve your needs?
I am glad that you asked this question because sadly, the time that I'm talking about is about 10 years back. And back then, we did not talk about mental health. Back then, it was a taboo. You do not talk about, about accidents, about experiences, and it all was, there was no awareness actually. It was equally important, and you had to find your own avenues through to navigate through it. Right now, everybody is aware of the importance of mental health, for which is equally important like your physical health. But we tend to ignore it and we tend to neglect it. For me, this whole journey of getting into starting a jewelry business was kind of a coping therapy to build something really positive in a very negative environment. And I think that is the beauty of what I do. And that's why I call it Enchanté, something that brings delight. And it was actually the silver lining to a very dark cloud.
Absolutely. And I am a coach, but sometimes I feel, especially now, if you rely too much on external support, be it
Yeah.
therapy and coaching, and these days people are also reaching out to GPT, which
Yeah,
is also,
yeah, that's
which is actually
extremely
very,
harmful.
which is very dangerous.
Yeah,
But I believe that can sometimes not help you because you're so dependent
yeah,
on others that you really don't know what your internal talent is.
yeah.
If you don't mind sharing, what was that life altering event?
No, I don't mind sharing at all. As you know, that Karachi has seen a lot of chaos and disruption,
Hmm.
and there was a period when it was a very volatile
Hmm.
city, and my family was also impacted by some of the incidents happening back then. I'm talking about an era between 2012 and 2014.
Yes.
And I think a lot of families here were impacted. Some moved abroad.
Hmm.
Some, like us, decided to stay here and move on. So we made a fresh start and tried to recover from that incident.
And there were security issues and
Absolutely, there were a lot of security issues. There were a lot of lawlessness in the city, and there were a lot of concerns related to a lot of elements, including safety and security.
and that's again very brave of you that going through that. And around that time, if again you don't mind me asking, how what was your source of income? Because when things are not working out.
My husband took off from work
Mm.
for a few. He works for a bank, and he did. From what it is almost more than a decade old, the
Mm.
story.
Mm.
But from what I recall, he did take a few months off, and then, once he felt up to it, he
Mm.
wanted to get back to it.
Mm.
But as I mentioned earlier about that element about mental health and wellness, that there was no talk about trauma or
Mm.
PTSD as there should have been at that point in
Mm.
time when we went through something
Mm.
traumatic. And we had to find our own coping mechanisms to come
Mm.
out of it.
Mm.
So I think that is really,
Yeah. So I think there's always this mental stress, emotional trauma, but also financial sometimes,
yeah,
right? And so being prepared and
yeah,
get ready. And congratulations, because I think going through that and
yeah,
then taking it so positively, I think itself is a
yeah.
great you're a great role model for that. You
Thank
and your family, I would say.
thank you.
When did you realize you have interest in jewelry making? Because tech itself is a great field, and
Yeah,
today, I mean, everything is
yeah.
AI and tech. It's almost like a buzzword. So when did you realize that you've got that creative streak?
I think the first lot that I designed, Facebook had just launched pages, and I had made a Facebook page to put up those designs that I
Mm.
had made. And seeing the response and getting my first order in
Huh.
itself was unbelievable. Firstly, you had created something that was a physical reality, and that feeling of joy, of pride, of ownership, and then obviously getting your order. So for me, it was not just a personal accomplishment, but it was also that thing that I had created was moving forward with as earns means of income because I
Mm.
was able to sell it.
Mm.
So I think that for me, and then because of the gemstones and my connection to them, my grandfather was a geologist. Growing up, we had seen him and heard him talk about a lot of, about Pakistan being such a naturally rich
Mm.
resource country, and seeing samples displayed in our
Mm.
in our drawing room and books related to his field. But I never knew that I would eventually fall in love with that.
Mm.
But it has been remarkable. It is such a beautiful science. We tend to look at it, from a commercial perspective of value, but once you start studying it, you fall in love with it.
So tell me more about gemology. My understanding, actually, I learned jewelry making when I was in Turkey
Okay.
and Singapore.
Wow.
And I loved it also, although I was very corporate, but weekends I would spend
Yeah.
my time there.
Yeah.
And so I know what you're talking
Yeah.
about in terms of creating
Yeah.
something which is just your
Yeah.
creation, right? But what was also very interesting, I wrote to Pakistan Institute of Gemology here, and I said if I want to pursue it further, what are your programs? And so they sent all the details. But what I was positively surprised, the cost was nominal. So
Yeah.
I said, this is so cheap, you know? And they said, yes, because we want to encourage
Yeah.
men and women
Yeah.
to get into this field. But still, I'm surprised not many people are studying it. So, what's your observation of this whole industry? While we have the resources, we've got the support,
Yeah.
government
Yeah.
funding, but why so few people are pursuing this field?
I think that is primarily because of the lack of awareness in the younger generation, especially about non-traditional careers.
Mm,
You know, we do not have that kind of exposure for our younger lot. I would say even for the adults,
mm,
because when you start about pursuing a career, it's normally your, the science fields are divided into medical and then those engineering and then finance and banking.
mm,
And something that is an amalgamation of both the creative arts and science, like gemology, is very much neglected
mm,
because we don't have those kind of institutions, we don't have those kind of role models, and they're not even aware that you can pursue whole careers in this field
mm,
and lucrative careers. Look at Paris, look at all of Europe, look at the designer houses and the teams that they employ to bring up their collections each year. So I believe that once art students, especially in art schools, get that kind of awareness about this field and how they can take it forward as a career
mm,
and earn out of it,
mm,
there's going to be a lot more attention given to it. And
mm,
I'm hoping that happens soon.
mm. And are there design houses in Pakistan?
So currently, Pakistan Institute of Fashion Design in Lahore offers an undergrad uh, degree, a course in jewelry making, gemology and jewelry making, but that's one of a kind. It's very unique. Other institutes offer short courses related to designing aspect of it, but it's not a whole degree and it's not a complete curriculum that the way it should be taught.
Mm. So, if you study gemology here or jewelry making, can you be employed by international um, jewelry making houses, or you've got to upskill yourself and go abroad and do another program or certification?
I think exposure, especially global one, is really important to broaden your perspective and bring your work up to that mark that matches international standards. For us in Pakistan, you'd be surprised to know that we have some of the best artisans that are available anywhere in the world. We talk about Indian heritage and Indian craftsmanship. We have people running after Turkish crafts, but our artisans are equally good. Just give them a chance to prove themselves. There are generational artisans working here as well. And students who want to pursue it. So when I was at a course in London last year, they were very surprised because the group that I was studying in had somebody from Paris, somebody from Tiffany's, somebody from Germany. There were some from Hong Kong, but they never got students from Pakistan, at that level showing interest in those fields. So I think, as I said earlier, more awareness around it, more spotlight on it as a career would definitely bring people forward.
Hmm. And what kind of metals we are more comfortable, or gemstones we are more comfortable working with, or typically we work with here in Pakistan?
Sadly, I think there's a lot of, though I would hope that this trend changes, but post-COVID, we saw a flux of mass-produced items, including jewelry, in the commodity markets here.
Hmm.
So e-commerce was all about stocking up an inventory and then selling it through a website or
So
a
gold and
portal.
silver, or
It's all plated.
semi-precious, all
It's
plated.
it's all plated.
Hmm.
Most of the stuff that you see here in Pakistan are plated alloys. That is why, even though there has been volatility in the commodity market, but we as a brand are still, preferring to manufacture in silver
Hmm.
because we believe in sustainable fashion. We
Hmm.
believe in
Yeah. Yeah.
metals like gold and silver as the perfect choice for jewelry making because jewelry is not just a one-time wear. It is an heirloom that you pass on to your next generation, like it was
That's
passed on to
right.
us, right?
That's right.
So you have to have something that lasts a lifetime. And the beauty about silver is that you can get it repolished, redone anytime
Hmm.
that you want. You can upscale it, you can uplift it, you can change the finish, the plating, the polish. So it's very versatile
So
that way.
remolded, like gold,
Yeah.
silver. And what about diamond? I know there's lab-produced diamond, and I mean, personally, I like pearls. So
I'm a pearls person too.
yeah, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
okay with diamonds because I
Yeah.
believe they're good, but so
I
it does.
think with I mean, should probably not say that on camera, but I think they're overhyped.
Yeah, I was gonna
Once you
say,
study, I did my whole diamond grading course last
ha
year,
ha.
and then when you get to know about the whole history behind diamond mining and the industry and
Yeah,
how it
I
was
was
set
gonna
up,
say,
right?
yeah,
So you realize how overhyped it is.
yeah.
But yeah, I'm a pearl person.
Because I think it brings a lot more personality and softness.
Absolutely.
But coming back to diamonds, I mean, they're lab-grown
Yeah.
diamonds. The reason I was saying, because I'm not so much into diamonds, I don't care, right? If they're lab, in fact, it's better if they're
Yeah.
lab-grown because it protects the human
Environment.
rights,
Yeah.
right? The environment. What is the trend here in Pakistan?
I think up to a certain extent, people have heard the terminologies and are trying to understand it, but they do not know the mechanisms behind it.
Hmm.
So, for someone like me, I love educating my clients about both the lab grown variety and the natural grown diamonds, and why it is important to know that this disruption that is happening
Hmm.
has very strong advocates for natural diamonds, and organizations have gone internationally as far as to pass rules and regulations that you cannot use the word, you have to add the word lab in front of a lab grown diamond to differentiate, and all to do with their grading and their
Hmm.
charts and their certifications, because it is a powerful industry,
Hmm.
and it is a whole power dynamics that is being
Correct.
that's
Yeah.
ruling the global world
Hmm.
in this industry. And if you disrupt those scales, there are a lot of people who are going to be at a lot of disadvantage, and you don't want to do that.
Hmm.
But as you said, lab growns are the rage, and they will take over, though I personally believe it may take a lot of time. But the newer lot that is coming in, the Gen X and the Gen Zs, they are more conscious about the environment. And for them, when making a choice or selection, about a diamond, they would definitely be preferring lab grown.
Hmm. And now setting up your own jewelry business in Pakistan, because what I'm familiar are families,
Yeah.
right? Where you go and buy gold because you know you can trust them.
Yeah.
Now I'm coming to more sort of as a designer
Yeah.
and establishing your jewelry
Yeah.
brand. Is it a profitable business? Or is it better to import from Thailand, from Turkey, or wherever and sell it?
See, I think that's about your vision with your work. It has a lot to do with how far you're willing to go with it. If it is just a whim and a small time hobby that you want to do and kill time, you would probably want to invest in an inventory and just sell it off, make some money, and then maybe move on to the next thing. But if you're building a brand, and if you want to retain those
Hmm.
clientele
Hmm.
and take it forward, so for us, it is really important, and our end goal is to highlight Pakistan on that international level with other jewelry platforms, that we have exceptional work being done here as well, and we want to make that name forward, and we want to compete on that level. For us, it is important to build a brand from grassroots to that level,
Hmm.
educating it with emphasis on quality and finish, on value.
Hmm.
And jewelry is not, again, as I said, it's not just an accessory, it is a whole part of your being. It
Hmm.
is a memory, it's a
Hmm.
milestone, it's an expression. And that is how I would want it to be treated in Pakistan as well.
Okay, and how do you find, or rather, where do you find talent or people who can work in your team? Is it easy to find uh, sort of
So,
craftsmen here in Pakistan?
so it is, I would say, there are a lot of generational craftsmen
Mm,
that are so unbelievably talented,
mm,
that I always, as a creative person, I always feel that no matter how sophisticated the machines get, they will never be able to do justice to art like it should be done.
mm,
And there are lots of art fields of artistic expressions in jewelry making that have been passed down generation to generation, like, for instance, enameling and meenakari. South Asia has, has been known for some most beautiful enameling artists throughout the Mughal era and later on. And unfortunately, we are now labeling them as dying crafts because generational craftsmen, the younger lot does not want to get into it. And that is what we're trying to preserve with our work here. So we want to make sure that those artisans, not only do we help them upskill their craft and their trade by what we have seen abroad and what we have learned abroad, and help them take their craft to the next level, find that finesse that often is missing here because lack of exposure, and then preserve it for the next generations to come. Polki is one of those crafts, and Kathak work is one of those crafts. There's so many traditional techniques of jewelry making that are slowly dying down because of those mass-produced jewelry items. And I think till we value our crafts, we will not be able to preserve them. So the first part is obviously honoring those craftsmen and honoring those talented people that work with us.
And if someone has to learn those techniques, where do they go?
I would say to write to the workshop in the middle of the jewelry market because there's no learning like the one you do on ground. And I think no podcasts and no books can teach you what you can learn hands-on. I'm not a bench jeweler myself, but I do like to take an opportunity whenever I can and sit and learn. And I want to find out how they've been doing it and why they've been doing certain things a certain way, because to them, that's the best way of doing it. So it's very important to understand where they're coming from generation to generation and how maybe with science and advancement we can make it better for them.
We were talking about funding earlier, right?
Yeah.
So you established this business 10 years ago, and I'm sure you want to scale it. Where do you get the funding? Because that's another part, right? One is developing the craft, but the other one is
The
creating that
business side,
scale
yeah.
and making it a viable commercial
Yeah,
model.
yeah.
What is government doing about it, or are there platform where you can approach and get some funding?
That is kind of a pain point, if to be honest, because see, there's a very difficult balance between the artistic side of work and the business side of work. And for me to balance it, I think I often struggle because the creative side wins, and I'm not a very good businesswoman. I can owe that on camera. I don't have that knack for marketing and for that business acumen that you need to scale very rapidly. I'm a slow worker and I work with intention, and I believe in slow progress that is meaningful. Having said that, I think funding opportunities in my field are very rare because most of these tech accelerators or incubators or we see hackathons or funds are targeted towards more towards edtech, health tech, and fintech, and now we have AI taking over everything and anything these days. So for this category, it has to be a very specialized or niche kind of organization that would probably help us out.
So at the moment, there are not that many options, which could itself be an impediment unless obviously you get trained here and you go abroad and then
Yeah.
work for big designer
Yeah.
firms. What about mentorship, sponsorship, and also the trade shows? Are they available, and are they productive?
So I think I'm a very firm believer of giving back, and I feel mentorship is transformative, especially if you're a startup or an entrepreneur. And I've seen that happening with my own journey. I am very actively involved with a lot of incubation centers here, including NIC Karachi, the one at IBA, and a few other universities. And I like to volunteer to especially train or mentor women-led startups because I think they are the ones that need the hand holding the most. And for our fields particularly, I think you know, trade shows, as you just mentioned, I was selected for one by the ITC World Bank
ITC
Program.
is?
International Trade Center. It is a project, She Trades is a project of the World Bank. And they did a pilot in Pakistan as part of it. They're very active in Africa and India and Nepal. And they took us to a trade show in Birmingham, where Europe's entire retail industry was there to purchase for the upcoming season. And having showcased at such a platform, you realize, you get validated, and then you realize that we are at par with everything happening globally. It's just isolation from those platforms that has not enabled us to reach out to and make connections there. For businesses that are focused towards lifestyle, including jewelry and fashion industry, I think I've seen a lot of mentors from the industry also give out time and volunteer for these kind of startup incubators, as I mentioned. And for me personally, my DMs are always open, and I always encourage young ones who are starting off, because you don't want them to make the same mistakes that you did, right?
Absolutely.
And I wish I had more people guiding me when I was going through it. I always say, fail fast and fail more, because the amount that you learn from failure, you don't learn from success. So, but mentors, I think they are the most transformative thing, because they help you build up your perspective from a short term to a long term, and I think that is very important.
Okay. But it's good to know that at least there's sort of that kind of support available,
Yeah.
if not financially. What's your brand called and what's the story behind it?
So the brand is called Enchanté, which is a French word, something that brings delight, something that brings happiness when you meet, and that's the whole philosophy of the jewelry that we create. We want to create pieces that make a woman happy, that uh, become part of her jewelry box for years to come, that are cherished a lifetime. It's not just jewelry, it's art that we want to create, and we want to create those linkages with memory, with milestones, and with your special moments.
And do you do any specific kind, like rings or bracelets, or all kind?
So we have collections, both minimal and maximal. For minimalistic everyday, we have a Nova collection that is targeted to a more younger audience, a more everyday, suitable and very popular for gifting. Uh, I was it was an intentional step in my design process to target a younger crowd, because I'm hardcore, vintage, and I'm very much into heritage jewelry. And we have, started doing designs in kundan and escalating to a more formal and festive line, including bridals. So we do cater to both ends, and then of course there are some very signature pieces that we are known for. As I mentioned, enameling is one of those techniques, and then pearls. So we have a whole collection done in pearls called the Sea Goddess, which is very close to my heart personally, because I find them, very appropriate, both for gifting and for everyday wear. And of course, the bridal in itself is very, I think it's slightly overdone here in Pakistan.
Yeah.
But then again, you have to have that kind of audience that you're targeting, that refinement that we are trying to bring into bridal jewelry. That is what we are targeting. I would also specifically like to mention a line that I think we were the pioneers of it in Pakistan, which was calligraphy. About 9 years ago, we started a series called the Signature Series, where we design calligraphic names into wearable accessories, especially for men, including cufflinks. Then we did buttons. We even did belt buckles. And for females, of course, we do those pendants, rings, and bracelets. And we were collaborating with the Persian artist in Tehran on that series to bring life, to revive Urdu in a way that it became fashionable again. And I think it took off really well, because then there was a lot of mass, influx of calligraphy pieces in the jewelry industry locally as well. But we've still maintained that USP of having a very renowned artist. He has a PhD in calligraphy who does that for us. So the pieces are truly bespoke, unique, and very beautiful.
And do you use just names or like Aza Femi? Like she would have messages,
So
right?
Asa is one of my personal favorite designers. So
Yeah,
it's a
same here. I love her designs.
so it's a bespoke line. So we just don't do names. We have done phrases,
Hmm?
we have done initials, and we have also done some strange requests. But yeah, I won't.
Okay,
But
can you
it's
share the
interesting.
strangest or the funniest request?
I was asked, not part of the calligraphy series, but then I was asked to design a signet ring for a secret club.
Sorry, say that again. What is it?
A signet ring for a secret club, and it was so the brief was so
Secretive.
secretive and complicated. I had to refuse the project because I was not I was little confused
So, what
about.
was the brief?
It was a secret. I can't share that. But
Really?
yeah.
Oh,
And then there was some really funny incidents. So this lady got cufflinks designed for her husband's initials in Urdu. When we delivered, she got back to us saying, I forgot the nuktas. It's not seen, it's sheen. And for me, that was an unforgettable moment because I was like, how can you forget your husband's initials? And that they start with sheen and not seen. So
I'm assuming what I mean, Shehzad. So, I don't know. Like, I'm thinking Sheen right now.
yeah.
Yeah, these
So
are
so
funny
there are
incidents.
some really
Yeah.
interesting stories.
But did you not ask the name? Did you not say what's.
So, when you do custom orders, clients are very rigid. This is what I want written, and this is how I want written. I was like, she opted for the alphabet cufflinks. I was like,
Okay.
which alphabet do you want done? And
Oh,
she was
okay.
like, I want sheen done. I was like, okay, fine, sheen done.
Huh.
And then, I was like,
Sheen.
all right. Then she shifted to sheen. I was like, okay. So,
Okay,
yeah, that was
good. But you
interesting.
do custom jewelry and
I
then
do
you have
custom
your
jewelry.
own
Yeah.
collection.
Yeah, we do.
Thank you, Sukaina. So, this is our last round, and I'll be asking some questions. It's called a rapid fire round. You don't have to think too much, whatever comes to your mind.
Perfect.
A gemstone that symbolizes your journey.
Pearl.
Why?
But because the way a natural pearl is grown with layers over time, that really mirrors my journey, slow, intentional growth that turned into something really beautiful.
Your favorite jewelry designer.
So there are a couple, but if I have to pinpoint, I'd like to do two. One is Jar, Joseph Arthur Rosenthal. He is known for his very dramatic artistic pieces. Is an American-based designer now in Paris, and the other, of course, is Azafemi. I love the way she has encapsulated traditional storytelling in her pieces.
Yeah.
The way she expresses that into contemporary pieces is
Yes.
amazing. I
Yes.
really love that.
Me too. We've already discussed this, but I'm going to ask and I'm going to remove pearls because you've already
Yeah,
spoken about it. Diamond, silver, gold. Pick one.
Silva.
Really? Why not gold? I'm a gold person, by the way.
I know, but I think silver has that beauty, that space to experiment the way you
That's
can't do in
true.
gold, right?
Huh.
So there's a lot of, it gives you a lot of creative freedom.
Huh. It is. It is because when I was learning and when I
Yeah,
created a few pieces, it was silver.
yeah,
I mean, one, gold was expensive, but I also felt, and the teacher also
yeah,
advised that initially you start with
yeah.
silver because you can do more
Bilkul,
creativity,
bilkul.
and I could see that
Yeah.
as well. So, are you a minimalist or maximalist when it comes to jewelry?
Minimal with meaning and statement if the occasion demands it, then
Then you'll
yeah,
wait.
yeah,
I love statement pieces too. You know, sometimes you just wear simple clothes and
yeah,
wear a statement
yeah.
piece. But do you find them easily here in Pakistan?
Not the ones that stand out.
Not the ones, right? You
Not the one.
find lots of
Because
jewelry, but not like statement
because
piece.
unfortunately in the Desi context, statement is translated into bling.
Ha ha ha
So,
ha ha.
and I don't agree with that. I
Ha.
think a very subtle piece can also be statement. It
Yeah.
does not have to be bling.
And also you can wear one or two
Yeah,
and that should be it. Because sometimes I
absolutely.
think our focal point on jewelry, and this is for women, I have noticed Yeah, but also I think I would
Yeah.
say the subcontinents, or even
Yeah.
because I live in Dubai, I say that too many like you'll have like the design or the bling here,
Yeah,
and
and
then
then
you'll have
you have to have a
your
stack here.
stack here, and then
Yeah,
you'll have
the
rings, and you're
multiple
like it's
rings,
all
please.
over, and then you have
Yeah.
I mean, where one or two. And
Yeah.
also one thing I realize, it doesn't have to be expensive. It's great if you can afford it, one
Yeah.
or two, but it has to be uh, beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And yeah, but here it's slightly different. Creativity or commerce, which requires more effort?
Commerce. Creativity is instinctive. Commerce requires discipline and it requires a lot of hard work.
And what kept you going when quitting felt easier?
When I looked back and saw how far I had come, I did not come this far to quit.
That's a good one. One sentence you tell your younger self.
One sentence that I tell my younger self is to dream big. Don't dream small, dream big. The sky's the limit. Women tend to be very conservative with all our tags and our imposter syndromes and our, responsibilities and all of it. Dream big.
Thank you so much, Sukaina. It was a pleasure hosting you here.
Thank you so much for having me today. I loved it. I loved being here and I loved the conversation. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.